You're not overweight. You try to eat better than most people your age. You walk a few times a week. Your labs weren't that bad at your last checkup. You don't feel sick. Then you check your blood pressure and the screen reads 1596. For a moment, you freeze. That doesn't match how you feel. You tell yourself it's stress. Maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe you had coffee. Maybe the cuff is wrong. So you wait a few minutes and test again. Still high. Here's what most people don't understand. 158.96 is not just a number. It's not just a little elevated. It's a message, and your arteries are the ones sending it. The most dangerous part, you probably feel completely normal. No pain, no warning signs, no dramatic symptoms, but inside your body, something is changing. When your systolic number climbs into the 150s, your arteries are no longer relaxing the way they should. Healthy arteries are flexible. They expand and contract smoothly with every heartbeat. But under constant pressure, they begin to stiffen. Their inner lining becomes irritated. Tiny microscopic damage starts forming. Damage you cannot see or feel. This is the hidden signal, silent arterial strain. Every time your heart beats, it pushes blood against vessel walls that are slowly losing elasticity. Over months and years, that pressure accelerates plaque buildup, narrows blood flow, and increases your risk of stroke, heart attack, kidney problems, and even cognitive decline. And yet, you feel fine. That's why high blood pressure is often called the silent threat. Many people only discover the seriousness of it after a major event, when prevention is no longer the focus, but recovery is. If you're over 50, especially over 60, a reading like 158.96 isn't something to ignore. It's your body's early warning system. It's your arteries telling you they're under stress. The good news? This stage is still reversible. The damage isn't final. When you understand what the number really means and what that one hidden signal represents, you can take action to protect your heart, your brain, and your future. When you see a number like 158.96, the first thing most people focus on is the label high blood pressure, but what truly matters is what that pressure is doing inside your arteries every second of the day. Your heart is a powerful pump, and with each beat, it pushes blood through a network of vessels designed to be flexible and responsive. In a healthy state, arteries expand slightly as blood flows through them and then gently recoil, helping maintain smooth circulation. That elasticity is what protects your organs from sudden pressure spikes. But when the systolic number rises into the 150s and stays there, the constant force begins to change the structure of those vessel walls. Over time, elevated pressure creates friction against the delicate inner lining of the arteries, known as the endothelium. This lining is not just a passive surface, it plays an active role in regulating blood flow, controlling inflammation, and preventing unwanted clot formation. When it is repeatedly exposed to higher than normal pressure, tiny injuries begin to form. You won't feel them. There is no pain receptor signaling that damage is occurring. Yet those microscopic disruptions allow cholesterol particles and inflammatory cells to settle more easily into the vessel wall. That is how plaque begins to build, slowly narrowing the pathway through which blood must travel. As arteries stiffen, they lose their ability to cushion each heartbeat. This creates a cycle. Stiffer arteries lead to higher systolic readings, and higher readings create even more stiffness. The heart then has to pump harder to overcome the resistance. That added workload can gradually thicken the heart muscle, particularly the left ventricle, which may sound strong but actually reduces efficiency over time. A thicker heart muscle requires more oxygen, and when combined with narrowed arteries, the risk of reduced blood supply increases. Meanwhile, your brain, kidneys, and eyes are being exposed to this elevated pressure with every pulse. The brain's small vessels are especially sensitive. Chronic strain can weaken them, increasing the likelihood of a blockage or rupture later on. In the kidneys, high pressure damages the tiny filtering units that remove waste from the blood, which can slowly impair kidney function. None of this announces itself with dramatic symptoms in the early stages. That is why people often feel completely normal while silent changes continue beneath the surface. What makes 158.96 particularly concerning is not a single reading on one day, but the possibility that this level has been present for months or even years. Blood pressure tends to rise gradually with age, and many people adjust to the idea that a little high is acceptable. But arteries do not adjust without consequence. They remodel under pressure, becoming thicker and less compliant. This remodeling may stabilize the vessel in the short term, yet it also makes it more vulnerable to long-term complications. Understanding this hidden process shifts the focus from fear to awareness. The number itself is not a verdict, it is feedback. It reflects how much resistance your circulatory system is currently facing and how much strain your heart is enduring. Recognizing that silent arterial strain is already underway allows you to respond early, while flexibility can still be preserved and before structural damage becomes permanent. One of the most misunderstood aspects of a reading like 158.96 is how it affects the body beyond the heart itself. Many people assume high blood pressure is only a heart issue, but in reality, it is a whole body condition because every organ depends on healthy blood flow. When pressure remains elevated, the impact extends far beyond the arteries you might imagine. It influences circulation patterns, oxygen delivery, hormonal balance, and even the way your nervous system responds to stress. Inside your brain, blood vessels are delicate and highly regulated. They are designed to maintain steady flow despite changes in activity or posture. But when systemic pressure is consistently high, those small vessels are exposed to force they were not built to tolerate long term. Over time, their walls can weaken or narrow. Reduced flexibility means less precise control over blood distribution. This increases the risk of tiny, often unnoticed disruptions in blood supply. Some of these may not cause immediate symptoms, but repeated micro-injuries can accumulate, affecting memory, processing speed, and overall cognitive resilience as the years go by. Your kidneys also play a central role in this process. They are responsible for filtering waste and balancing fluid levels in the body. To do that, they rely on networks of microscopic vessels that function under carefully controlled pressure. When readings remain in the range of 558-96, those filtering structures experience ongoing stress. The high pressure can damage the fine capillaries that act as sieves, allowing proteins that should stay in the bloodstream to leak into urine. Over time, this reduces the kidney's efficiency and can further worsen blood pressure, creating a reinforcing cycle between vascular strain and declining filtration. Even your eyes can reflect the hidden signal of sustained hypertension. The small vessels in the retina are visible during an eye exam, and changes in their shape or thickness often mirror what is happening elsewhere in the body. Narrowed or hardened retinal arteries are not just an eye issue, they are a window into systemic vascular stress. Subtle vision changes or increased sensitivity to light may appear gradually, but the underlying cause is often long-standing pressure on fragile vessels. Beyond individual organs, elevated blood pressure alters the communication between your circulatory system and your hormones. The body attempts to compensate by adjusting signals that regulate fluid retention and vessel constriction. Hormones that tighten blood vessels may remain more active, keeping pressure elevated even when you are at rest. This constant state of vascular tension can make stress responses stronger and recovery slower. What feels like normal daily tension may actually be amplified by an already strained system. The concerning part is that all of these changes can unfold quietly. There is no reliable sensation that tells you vessels are stiffening or organs are under increased load. Fatigue, mild headaches, or occasional lightheadedness are often dismissed or attributed to aging. Meanwhile, the cumulative effect of sustained pressure continues. Recognizing that 158.96 is not just about the heart, but about widespread vascular impact reframes the situation. It highlights why early awareness matters and why consistent monitoring, lifestyle adjustments, and medical guidance are critical before gradual organ strain progresses into irreversible damage. When someone sees 158.96 for the first time, the natural reaction is either panic or denial. But the most productive response is neither. It is structured action. Because while silent arterial strain may already be underway, this stage is still highly manageable. Blood vessels are dynamic tissues. They respond to how you live, what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and how consistently you follow medical guidance. That means the trajectory is not fixed. The first shift begins with understanding patterns, not isolated readings. One elevated number does not define your future, but repeated elevated readings reveal a trend. Measuring blood pressure at the same time each day, seated comfortably, feet flat on the floor after resting quietly for 5 minutes, creates reliable data. Many people discover their pressure fluctuates depending on stress, caffeine, sodium intake, or poor sleep. Identifying these patterns transforms the number from something mysterious into something measurable and actionable. Nutrition plays a powerful role in arterial flexibility. Excess sodium encourages fluid retention. Increasing the volume of blood the heart must push. Reducing processed foods and restaurant meals can significantly lower daily sodium intake without dramatic dieting. Increasing potassium-rich foods such as leafy greens, beans, and certain fruits helps counterbalance sodium's effects by supporting vessel relaxation. Adequate hydration also matters, as dehydration can trigger hormonal responses that raise pressure further. Movement is equally critical. Regular aerobic activity improves endothelial function, helping arteries regain some of their natural elasticity. Walking briskly for 30 minutes most days of the week has been shown to lower systolic pressure over time. Strength training, when performed safely, enhances metabolic health and insulin sensitivity, which indirectly benefits vascular stability. The goal is consistency rather than intensity. Even modest increases in daily steps can create measurable improvement. Sleep and stress management are often underestimated factors. Poor sleep disrupts hormonal balance and keeps stress hormones elevated, both of which tighten blood vessels. Establishing a consistent bedtime routine and limiting late-night screen exposure can stabilize nightly blood pressure patterns. Chronic stress, whether from work, finances, or caregiving responsibilities, keeps the sympathetic nervous system activated. Techniques such as controlled breathing, light stretching, or short periods of quiet reflection can lower baseline tension and reduce the cumulative load on arteries. For some individuals, lifestyle adjustments alone may not bring readings down to a safe range. In those cases, medication is not a failure, but a protective tool. Modern blood pressure medications work in different ways. Some relax blood vessels, others reduce fluid volume, and some slow heart rate to decrease force. When prescribed appropriately and taken consistently, they reduce long-term risk significantly. The key is adherence. Skipping doses or stopping medication abruptly allows pressure to rebound and strain to resume. What makes this stage empowering is timing. At 158.96, structural damage may have begun, but it is often not advanced. Arterial stiffness can improve. Endothelial function can recover. The heart's workload can decrease. Small daily changes compound over months, gradually lowering readings and restoring resilience. The hidden signal becomes an opportunity rather than a sentence. A moment to intervene before silent strain evolves into permanent injury. Another critical piece people often overlook when facing a number like 158.96 is how consistency over time determines risk far more than a single spike. Blood pressure is not static. It rises and falls throughout the day depending on activity, posture, stress, meals, and even conversation. What determines long-term impact is the average load your arteries experience hour after hour, day after day. When elevated pressure becomes the baseline rather than the exception, that steady mechanical force reshapes the vascular system. Think of it like water flowing through a hose. If the pressure is slightly high for a few seconds, nothing dramatic happens. But if that pressure remains elevated for months, the hose gradually stiffens, weakens, and becomes more prone to damage. Your arteries behave similarly. Persistent elevation encourages structural remodeling. The muscular layer in the vessel wall thickens in response to the constant demand, which initially helps the vessel tolerate force. Over time, however, that thickening reduces flexibility and narrows the internal diameter, increasing resistance further. This chronic load also affects how blood flows within the vessels. Healthy circulation is smooth and laminar, meaning blood moves in organized layers. When vessels stiffen or narrow, flow patterns can become more turbulent. Turbulent flow increases friction against the arterial lining, contributing to further endothelial irritation. That irritation signals inflammatory processes to activate, subtly accelerating plaque development even when cholesterol levels are only moderately elevated. Another overlooked factor is how elevated pressure interacts with aging. As we grow older, arteries naturally lose some elasticity. Collagen content increases and elastin fibers degrade gradually. When high blood pressure is layered on top of normal aging, the stiffening process speeds up. This is why the same reading may carry different long-term implications depending on age and overall vascular health. A 35-year-old and a 65-year-old with identical readings may experience different rates of progression, yet both benefit from early correction. Long-standing elevated pressure can also influence pulse pressure, the difference between systolic and diastolic numbers. In a reading like 158.96, that gap reflects how forcefully blood is being ejected and how well arteries recoil between beats. A widening pulse pressure over time often indicates increasing arterial stiffness. Monitoring trends rather than isolated values helps clinicians assess whether vessels are losing compliance. Importantly, sustained high pressure does not operate in isolation. It interacts with blood sugar control, lipid levels, body weight, and physical activity patterns. Mild elevations in several areas can combine to amplify overall cardiovascular strain. This cumulative burden rather than a single abnormal value shapes long-term outcomes. Addressing multiple moderate risks often produces greater benefit than focusing on one extreme measurement. The encouraging reality is that vascular remodeling is not entirely one-directional. When pressure is reduced and maintained at healthier levels, arteries can regain some functional elasticity. Inflammation can decrease. Flow patterns can stabilize. Even modest reductions in systolic pressure significantly lower the statistical risk of stroke and heart attack over time. The key lies in sustained control, not temporary improvement, recognizing that consistent lower pressure allows vessels to operate under safer mechanical conditions and gradually reduces the silent wear that accumulated during years of unnoticed strain. Perhaps the most important element in understanding a reading like 158.96 is recognizing the long-term trajectory it represents if nothing changes. High blood pressure rarely causes immediate catastrophe at this level, which is precisely why it is so often neglected. The body adapts quietly. You wake up, go to work, run errands, spend time with family, and life feels normal. But beneath that normal rhythm, cumulative stress continues. The cardiovascular system operates under slightly higher tension every hour, and that tension compounds over years rather than days. The risk does not usually come from one dramatic surge. It builds from repetition. Each elevated pulse slightly stretches vessel walls. Each day of persistent strain slightly advances stiffness. Over time, this creates a tipping point where arteries are less capable of absorbing sudden changes. A stressful event, dehydration, illness, or an intense emotional moment can trigger a spike on top of an already elevated baseline. When vessels are healthy and flexible, they buffer those spikes. When they are stiff and thickened, their ability to absorb force is reduced, increasing the likelihood of rupture or blockage. Another dimension to consider is how high blood pressure reshapes lifestyle expectations over time. People may unconsciously limit activity if they begin to experience subtle fatigue or shortness of breath. They may attribute these changes to aging rather than vascular efficiency. Reduced activity then further contributes to higher pressure and declining metabolic health, creating a quiet downward spiral. The interplay between vascular strain and overall vitality can gradually alter independence and quality of life long before a major medical event occurs. The encouraging reality is that the trajectory is not fixed. Even at 158/96, the system remains responsive. Studies consistently show that lowering systolic pressure by even 10 to 15 points significantly reduces the likelihood of stroke and heart disease. That reduction is not theoretical. It translates into fewer hospitalizations, preserved mobility, and sustained cognitive function. What feels like a small numerical change can represent a substantial reduction in mechanical stress with every heartbeat. Consistency becomes the deciding factor. Short-term efforts produce temporary improvements, but long-term stability protects arteries. That means maintaining medication adherence if prescribed, following up with healthcare providers to adjust treatment when necessary, and continuing lifestyle measures even after numbers improve. Blood pressure management is not a one-time correction, but an ongoing partnership between daily habits and medical oversight. It is also essential to replace fear with informed vigilance. Panic raises stress hormones and temporarily increases pressure further. Calm, steady action produces sustainable results. Understanding that 158/96 is a warning rather than a verdict reframes the conversation. It signals that the body is asking for support before irreversible damage occurs. The window for meaningful prevention remains open. By treating elevated pressure as a measurable, manageable condition rather than an abstract threat, you shift from passive awareness to active protection. Every lower reading achieved and maintained represents less strain on delicate vessels, reduced workload for the heart, and a more stable environment for the brain and kidneys. Over months and years, those consistent improvements accumulate, reshaping the long-term outlook and preserving function far into later decades of life. It doesn't mean you failed, it doesn't mean damage is irreversible, and it certainly doesn't mean something catastrophic is guaranteed to happen tomorrow. What it does mean is that your arteries are under more strain than they should be, and that strain, if left unaddressed, can quietly shape your future health. The powerful part is this: you caught it. Awareness is the turning point. Most serious cardiovascular events don't come out of nowhere, they are the result of years of silent progression. When you recognize elevated blood pressure early, you interrupt that progression. You create space for prevention instead of recovery. You move from reacting to a crisis to actively protecting your heart, brain, kidneys, and long-term independence. Small, steady changes matter more than dramatic short bursts of effort. Monitoring consistently, adjusting diet thoughtfully, moving your body regularly, sleeping intentionally, managing stress with awareness, taking prescribed medication as directed, following up with your healthcare provider. These are not extreme measures, they are protective habits that compound over time. Remember, arteries are living tissue. They respond to pressure, to nutrition, to activity, to inflammation. When you reduce strain, they respond. When you support them, they adapt. Improvement is possible. Stability is achievable. Risk can be lowered. Most importantly, do not ignore the signals simply because you feel fine. Feeling fine does not always mean everything is fine beneath the surface. The absence of symptoms is not the absence of stress. Treat the number as information. Let it guide action, not fear. Let it motivate consistency, not anxiety. Because the real goal is not just lowering a reading on a screen. The real goal is protecting the years ahead. Your clarity, your mobility, your independence, your time with the people you care about,